All right, let's talk about what actually builds muscle. There's so much noise out there, so much gym lore and conflicting advice. Today, we're going to cut right through all of that. We're going to get back to the core principles, the science-backed foundations that truly get results. Let's dive in. So, where do we start? Well, believe it or not, we're not starting in the weight room. We're starting on the farm with this guy, the Belgian Blue Bull. Now, that physique is just incredible, and it's from a natural genetic quirk that basically turns off its muscle-limiting switch. But here's the really fascinating part. It's not just about being huge. These animals are also incredibly lean. And that's a perfect illustration of a key idea. Muscle is one of the most powerful metabolic engines you can possibly build. In agriculture, they've actually got a name for this whole process. It's called repartitioning. Farmers use it to help animals build more muscle, and as a direct result, their body fat goes down. The body literally repartitions its energy. It builds more useful tissue and stores less fat. And guess what? This isn't just for livestock. The exact same principle applies to us. So, how powerful is this effect in humans? Honestly, it's kind of surprising. Research shows that even a modest increase in the muscle you build leads to an even bigger drop in body fat. The takeaway here is crystal clear. If you really want to change your body composition for the better, building muscle isn't just an option, it is, without a doubt, one of the most effective things you can do. Okay, so that naturally brings us to the how. The first, most fundamental pillar of muscle growth or hypertrophy is volume. The best way to think about it is like a prescription, right? To get the result you want, you have to take the right dose. Too little and you get nothing, so let's figure out exactly what that dose is. So let's just get straight to the point. What does all the science say is the absolute bare minimum you need to be doing every single week to see real, measurable muscle growth? The number you need to burn into your brain is 10. The evidence all points to a floor of at least 10 hard, challenging sets for each muscle group every single week. If you're doing less than that, you are almost certainly leaving gains on the table. This is your starting line. It's the non-negotiable weekly dose for growth. And you know what? Those 10 sets are really just the beginning. The research shows this super clear dose-response relationship. It's simple. As you intelligently add more volume each week, your gains tend to go right up along with it. In fact, studies show benefits all the way up to around 28, even 30 sets per muscle group per week. It just means that more smart work usually equals more growth. All right, let's move on to our next big pillar. We know the volume we need, but what about the actual weight on the bar? This is where we get into one of the oldest debates in any gym. Do you have to lift heavy for low reps, or can you go light for high reps? So the traditional way of thinking sets up this classic showdown. You've got heavy weights, low reps, which creates a ton of mechanical tension. That's the pure force stretching your muscle fibers. Then on the other side, you've got lighter weights for high reps, which creates a ton of metabolic stress, that burn. For a long time, we thought both built size, but through totally different pathways. But this is where the modern science gets really, really interesting. And this quote from a leading researcher, Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, just nails it. It turns out you can get amazing muscle growth with 5 reps, or 15 reps, or even 30 reps. The rep range is way more flexible than we thought. But there's a huge catch. There's one critical thing that has to happen for it to work. And this right here, this is the absolute game changer, the great equalizer. The thing that makes heavy and light lifting produce similar results isn't the weight on the bar, it's the effort you put in. It all comes down to how close you're willing to push to your absolute limit. The why behind this is just fascinating. When you take a light set all the way to failure, to what scientists call volitional fatigue, you're basically forcing your body to call in the big guns. It has to recruit its largest, most powerful muscle fibers to keep going. And here's the kicker. Those are the exact same fibers that fire immediately when you lift something really heavy. The effort itself is the trigger. Now, if you don't want to train to failure, that's fine. But then the load does matter again. You've got to be lifting heavier to make sure you're tapping into those key fibers for growth. Okay, so we've got our foundation. Get enough volume and train with high effort. Now that we're standing on solid ground, let's use that knowledge to tackle some of the biggest myths and fads out there. The stuff that distracts people from what really matters. First up is an absolute classic. For years, people have been obsessed with the anabolic window, chasing that temporary spike in hormones like testosterone and growth hormone right after a workout, thinking that's the magic trigger for muscle growth. Well, the research is now overwhelmingly clear on this. It's a myth. That short little hormonal bump you get after training, it has no significant impact on your long-term muscle or strength gains. The real magic is the tension and the stress we already talked about, not these fleeting hormone changes. All right, next up is a more recent trend, one you see all over social media. It's this idea that women should biohack their training by lining up specific workout styles with the different phases of their menstrual cycle to get better results. But when you actually look at the scientific evidence, the whole theory just kind of falls apart. The data simply does not support phase-based training for better results. The bottom line here is pretty simple. Adjust your training based on how you feel. Symptoms like cramps or fatigue are very real, and you should absolutely manage them. But don't change your whole program for a supposed hormonal advantage that the data shows just isn't there. So, we've laid the foundation and we've busted the myths. Let's wrap this all up and put it into a simple, actionable plan. This is what you really need to focus on. Honestly, it all boils down to this really simple checklist. Number 1, get your volume in, at least 10 hard sets a week. Number 2, make sure the effort is there by pushing yourself close to failure. And number 3, focus your time and energy on these foundational principles, not the latest fads. If you can nail these 3 things, you are absolutely on the right track. And that really brings us to our final and maybe most important question. Look, anyone can go to the gym and train hard, but building muscle in the best way possible isn't just about sweating. It's about applying that effort intelligently. So, ask yourself, now that you know the science, are you training smart or are you just training hard?